And specifically an event that happened around her passing, which just completely changed everything for me. A supernatural event, essentially, which is, I did not, it wasn't that I didn't believe in things like that. I was kind of always on the fence about it. But then when this event happened, it literally just shifted me in a completely different direction. And of course, when we lose a parent or when we lose anyone that we love, then all the grief that comes with it just gives everybody, gives you a new perspective on life, obviously, anyway. But that coupled with this thing that happened that I'll get to in a second, just really, just sent me on a completely different life path.
Phill Webster, thank you so much for joining us. I prefer, as always, not to share your story. I would rather just that they hear it from you directly. So without further ado, if you could just give us a brief introduction about what it is you do right now and what happened in the past that brought you to here.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for having me. Where to start? It's quite an eclectic. I've done a lot of different things that all seem to point to this direction. And finally things started making sense. But yeah, right now, I would class myself as an author. I've wrote a couple of books on spirituality and developing spiritual practices, extending psychic abilities, all of that kind of woo-woo stuff that I never thought that I was going to go down this avenue at all, but here we are. Previous to that, and I still am working as an actor, but it's not really my main priority right now. If a job comes up, I'll audition for it and I'll maybe get something, but it's not really, I feel like I've scratched that itch over the last few years, and that's kind of not really my main interest right now. Previous to that, I've done so many different things, and most of these things all really came from never quite knowing what I wanted to do. Growing up, I never thought, okay, I want to be a fireman or what have you. So I traveled around the world a lot, and then finally came back to the UK 2017. So really the catalyst for where I am right now was losing my mum a few years ago around the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that directly was where my first book came from. And specifically an event that happened around her passing, which just completely changed everything for me. A supernatural event, essentially, which is, it wasn't that I didn't believe in things like that. I was kind of always on the fence about it. But then when this event happened, it literally just shifted me in a completely different direction. And of course, when we lose a parent or when we lose anyone that we love, then all the grief that comes with it just gives everybody, gives you a new perspective on life, obviously, anyway. But that coupled with this thing that happened that I'll get to in a second, just really, just sent me on a completely different life path. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to hear about your mom.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's 3.5 years now, and I feel that, I don't know, of course, everybody experiences grief differently, and I'm not any expert on it. I can only sort of talk about my own experiences. We do obviously expect, I suppose, to lose our parents. But from my point of view, I was talking to a friend the other night, actually, I don't have anyone else. So I feel like I took it particularly, it was quite a blow. I don't have any brothers or sisters. I don't have any other family. I've got a couple of cousins, but so yeah, I don't know, with a bit of hindsight now, I can see that it really, really rocked me more than I was ever anticipated. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the supernatural event?
Well, that's it. So we'd gone through the COVID, we'd gone through 2020, and I won't dredge all that up. Everybody remembers that too clearly, I'm sure. My mum lived on a place called the Isle of Wight in the south of the UK, a small island, and I'd grown up there. I could never wait to get away. I couldn't wait to get away from the place when I was a kid. But then coming back to the UK after 20 years in 2017, I'm based in London now with my partner. So about 2 hours away from the Isle of Wight. You have to take like a short boat trip there, and then you're down there. But anyway, through COVID, I tried to do what I thought was the right thing. I was following the government guidelines. I was, doing all we were supposed to do. And my mum lived alone, so I was very conscious of giving her COVID, and that had happened to a couple of my friends. with devastating results. So I was really mindful of just keeping away from her. But she did suffer a lot. She definitely had a lot of mental health issues through that year. And I didn't see it because we would FaceTime every day. But in real time, like looking back on it, she really, really went downhill very quickly, physically and mentally. And I kind of didn't recognize it until after the fact, like looking at a picture of her from the start of 2020 to the end of it, it was like she'd like aged 10 years or something. Anyway, we would FaceTime every day. I hadn't seen her for a few months. I was about to start working on a big Marvel superhero film. And there was 4 months of work on that, which I really needed it, financially. And I was looking forward to working on a film like that. So again, very mindful about getting COVID. I forgot that in those points, that would have been it, that I would have been kicked off that film. So I hadn't seen her for a couple of months just because I was kind of just keeping myself to myself, trying to keep her safe. Anyway, we would FaceTime every day. And on this particular day, I think I'd spoke to her twice already. And she answered the phone. And just to talk about it practically, she would leave her phone charging on the floor in the hallway just outside her house. And this was about 10 o'clock at night. Again, we were in a lockdown, so I knew all of her daily routines. The only people that would go and see her would be these nurses that would just go and check that she was taking her meds properly and things like that. And I just must mention also, she had a few age-related health problems, but I thought she was going to be around for a long time. She had high blood pressure and like some problems with her heart. But for all intents and purposes, I thought, she was essentially fine and healthy. But anyway, when she answered the phone, she kind of leant into the screen and there was a man leaning in from the other side of the screen, which just threw me off completely because it was 10 o'clock at night. And I saw him long enough that I could describe him. He had thinning gray hair, glasses, and looked very sort of gaunt looking. Looked like he was maybe late 60s, something like that. I didn't recognize him. But I was just completely taken aback. And as she kind of pulled the phone up, he went out of shot. And I was like, well, who's that? And she said, who's what? And I said, well, the guy. I just like, who's the guy in the house? And she was like, no one's been here all day. And just kind of started talking about her day. And I had to interrupt her. And I said, look, Mum, I just saw someone. Like, so you're telling me that there's no one in the house? And she was like, no, there hasn't been anyone here all day. And I could always tell when somebody was with her because she would put on all these airs and graces and start speaking a lot more posher and politer, and I could never get a straight conversation out of her. It used to drive me nuts. And she wasn't doing any of that. She wasn't indicating that anyone else was with her. And I just thought, well, I just didn't get it. I was like, well, that doesn't make sense to me. I believe that there's no one in the house with her. Just based on everything I knew about her day to day and everyone that I knew, and that it's a very rural, small place. And we were in another lockdown. So I just thought, well, my brain just wouldn't, it just let it go. I was like, okay, well, I don't get that. I was like, I guess I was mistaken. And we spoke for like another 45 minutes. She didn't acknowledge anybody again. And yeah, we just sort of chatted away, went to bed that night. And then the next morning I got a phone call that she'd had a heart attack and passed. So, my mind did immediately go to the supernatural. I hadn't really, considered it as that the night before. But the next morning I was like, well, that is just really, I don't know what that was, Thing is as well, he didn't look like an uncle. He didn't look like my dad or anybody a family member that I recognized. But yeah, I'm convinced that there was nobody physically with her. Of course, I can't prove it. And I can't say absolutely that there was absolutely nobody there because I wasn't there. But again, going over this and mulling over it through the months of grief, I just came to the conclusion that, yeah, that was someone letting me know. And I didn't act on it. I just kind of thought, well, that's weird, and ignored it. And she passed away the next day. So yeah, it put a completely new perspective on things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they always say that the parts of the deceased will come and fetch them. So obviously you've seen that person. Do you think it's someone that she knew?
That's it. I wonder. I mean, who knows? People have had different suggestions. Yeah, perhaps it was an old boyfriend or something, or somebody that was nothing to do with me. Because I kind of, as that year went on and I was very heavily grieving, I did sort of make it all about me. I suppose you can't. You get so wrapped up in your emotions and everything's very, you're very fragile through those times, of course. But yeah, who knows? But 100% there was somebody there. It didn't sort of I don't know what I put it down to at the time. iPhones don't glitch and you suddenly get somebody else on the call or anything like that. And it was more than any kind of reflection. I saw the guy physically, face to face. But yeah, she wasn't indicating any sign that there was anyone else with her at all. So yeah, I just kind of the logical, if you can call it logical conclusion that I came to was that it was somebody letting me know that she was about to pass. And anyways, exploring this and going down that path then opened up a whole other world for me, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So just briefly going back, you say you traveled for quite a long time, for 20 years. What
Yeah.
was the reason for that? Was it just that you wanted to see the world? Were you trying to find yourself?
I think all of that. Although I didn't consciously sort of make an effort to find out, I just again never found that thing that really excited me. I really always had a hard time with just doing menial jobs, making money for somebody else. I would just, of course, I would work. I didn't not work, but I just never found that passion. But yeah, around 20, I went away. I had a Finnish girlfriend. I think I was 22 or something, and initially went to Finland. Then I started traveling more, went to around the States. I've been pretty much everywhere I wanted to go, with the exception of a few places. But yeah, all around the Caribbean, all around Europe, just all over the place. But I ended up settling back in Finland again for the most part, which was a really good base to go to other places from. Like it's a really good standard of living. As you know, like where I'm sure where you are, if you're in the Netherlands, I would say it's probably comparable in terms of money's pretty good, even if you're doing a sort of, regular job. I was working as a bartender for many years and it was really good money, like 3 times the amount that you'd get doing something like that in the UK. So it was a good base to just sort of make some money and then just go somewhere else. And then it got to the point that I was probably just the last couple of years there, I was going somewhere like every month. And I thought, well, this probably is an indicator that I need to leave. I'm just constantly trying to get out of here. So yeah, I came back to the UK 2017 and then pursued acting. I just thought, what would I really like to do if I was honest with myself, and just kind of went back to what I was into as a kid. And I thought, well, yeah, I've always been obsessed with films, and I don't have any education in how to make a film or anything like that. So I thought acting seemed the natural progression. And yeah, paid the bills with it for a few years up until recently. Yeah.
Hmm. Do you think part of your grieving was because you feel like you could have spent more time with your mom?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, she would drive me nuts as parents do, and we would argue and this and that, and I definitely over the last couple of years put her up on a pedestal and looked at her through, like a not unrealistic way, but I definitely can't remember any of the bad times, can't remember any of the arguments, that kind of stuff all goes away. Um, but yeah, I sorry, I went off track there. Um, but yeah, I just forgive me. What what was the original question? Sorry.
Question was, do you think that your traveling affected your grieving more because you felt like you abandoned
Oh,
her?
sorry, in that sense. Yeah, not really actually. The actual travel part. She was, funnily enough, she was quite pleased that I was elsewhere, and she seemed to be really proud of that. And she loved to come visit me in Finland. And actually, when I told her I was coming back to London, she got kind of annoyed with me. She was like, well, "Why the hell would you want to come back here for?" And I was like, "Well, sorry that it's interrupting your holiday plans, but yeah, you kind of need to make a life decision here." So yeah, but yeah, she was good. We were in a very nice part of London, and she enjoyed coming up here. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have done it any other way. I definitely needed to get away and do whatever I needed to do to sort of end up back here again. But yeah, I definitely needed to explore. And yeah, like I said, it was just kind of just me and her. So there probably was a need as a younger person that I just needed to sort of break that, and just
Hmm.
go the other side of the world. But yeah, I think more the guilt sort of came around the whole way that I handled the pandemic. With hindsight, I probably would have done it differently. I would have gone and spent more time with her, or even brought her to London, and just let her live with us for that period of time. Yeah, I definitely would have done that differently. And obviously, so many people lost so many people through that. I feel, well, she didn't get COVID, but I feel that indirectly it was almost the same thing. It was the same result in the end. Yeah.
So do you feel like the grief is survivor guilt?
Not sure about survivor guilt. just I wish I would have handled things differently. I think I mean, she was 76 years old. She had a heart attack. But I know that that came from her definitely going into a dark place. I think at some point she was like neglecting to take her meds, things like that. And I don't know for how long. And then she kind of got back on track again.
Mm.
So yeah, I feel that definitely contributed. I feel that she would have
Mm.
been around. And she was depressed. She did suffer with depression. So yeah, I just think that yeah, I would have just handled things differently, given hindsight. But what can you do? Yeah,
Hindsight's 2020.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So that led you on a path.
mm.
What happened subsequent? So how did you find out now there's actually something else going on? Because there's been a big shift from then to now.
Yeah, well, I definitely trusted that. I mean, I would tell friends about it, and some friends were immediately, well, you're grieving, you're just kind of what do you call it, magical thinking, and I was like, well, no, because it was before the fact. I wasn't grieving when this happened, right? So, and again, I can't 100% say that there was nobody else there, but I truly believe that there was no one else there. And then, of course, friends that would lean more towards the spiritual side of things would be, well, yeah, of course, that was a spirit guide or somebody just letting you know. So I did lean towards that. And while I was working on that film that I mentioned, again, through COVID, it was kind of relevant because we were all separated from each other. So I was getting through many books, and I started going back to older books that I'd read that had found interesting. Neil Donald Walsh kind of things like this, that I'd read in the past. Nothing too deep, but that I knew would kind of help me somewhat. And I suppose that kind of started opening up this door. And then one day we'd moved into a new place around the area where I am now in West London. And I walked past a small church that I'd walked past maybe 20 times before. Um, and it said there was a demonstration of mediumship on the following Sunday. And I was like, okay, well, that's never heard of it. I mean, I knew what a medium was, of course. Um, but I didn't realize people just did that openly. So I thought, well, I'm going to go along. I also must mention as well, I'd read a book by a lady called Claire Broad, which was all about mediumship, about her journey into becoming a medium. So my interest had been piqued. And then I went along to this open platform. Nobody knew I was going there. Even though no one knew I was going there, I still got oddly paranoid and turned all of my social media things private. And I don't know how I thought that, but I thought I just want to cover all bases and see if this thing's legit. And there was a lady working there. Her name's Janet Neville, and she's a very reputable medium in the UK. And she was just working away around the small congregation there, and people just getting affirmation after affirmation. People were like, "Yeah, yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about." And I was thinking, okay, seems like 9 times out of 10 that this is real. And it wasn't vague. It wasn't, well, I've got a grandfather, or I've got an older
Yes.
gentleman that had a heart attack. It was really specific. She was describing houses. She was describing the way people looked. And then she came to me, which I didn't know was a given. I mean, she didn't go to every single person in the church that night. And she started talking about a young man that had passed, and I was thinking, well, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. She was insistent, and she kept talking about this guy who'd passed when we were young, when I was in my 20s, and there was a couple of people that it could have been, but I still couldn't put my finger on it. And she was really insistent. She's like, no, 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 you're going to get this. He knows that you're going to get this. And then started talking about us studying together, and then all these things fell into place, and very specific things about the clothing we were wearing and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, damn, I know she's talking about. She's talking about like my friend Tim, who passed when he was 22. It was drug overdose. Um, and it all fell into place. And I was like, wow. And then she said, well, I've also got a lady here with me that's recently passed. I was like, okay, and sort of had a lump rise in the throat. And this was the thing. So she gave a very brief description of the way my mum passed, like the circumstances around it. But the thing that I didn't see coming and was the game changer, was really the next step for me, was her accent changed. So this medium, she had a very Cockney sort of, I hope she doesn't mind me saying that if she comes across it, she has a very strong London accent, I'll say. Not so much Cockney, but really distinctive. And then suddenly it changed to my mum's accent, which was a Northern English accent. And just the way she'd pronounce words with this, and that it was my mum's voice essentially. And she had no way of knowing that. I don't have that accent. and that just threw him, just blew me away completely. I feel like it was a literal life-changing moment, and I left there feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It soon came back, but initially that helped me so much. I was convinced that I just had a conversation with my mum months after she'd passed. So yeah, that was the next thing.
Yeah. So I see you went on search for higher connecting with higher selves, and you've also written 2 books. So you can just share a little bit about connecting with your higher self.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so this was all directly from that. And then I got one thing that the medium had said that night, Janet Neville, she said, you're a medium. And I was like, no. But funnily enough, I'd just read a book on it, and I was kind of interested in it. And she said, oh yeah, yeah. She said, you're going to be doing this. And I was like, okay, well, not really. It wasn't what I had in mind, but I took it on board. And then, yeah, I can't remember what the next step was. I think, yeah, the next step was the lady whose book I'd read, Claire Broad. She was giving a workshop at a place called the College of Psychic Studies in London, which I thought sounded ridiculous. I was like, the College of what? Like, seriously, like, is that a real thing? And I went along to this place and did this workshop with Claire, and we very quickly became connected. Like, we just sort of hit it off really well, and kept in touch with her. And she's my teacher still. Like, I'll go sit in her development circle. Yeah, so again, it was just kind of one thing after another, and then I just started learning about mediumship, and essentially just wrote the book documenting my own journey. And I was just kind of like, well, let's see where this ends up. Let's see where the book ends up. So I just essentially just documented my steps that I took, and a lot of it is meditation. Definitely, I don't sit meditating for hours, but I will try and meditate once a day, even if for 5 minutes in the morning. And that was really the key, I think, to progressing spiritually, learning about mediumship. So I've included all the meditations that I did as I went along. And in theory, I was thinking, well, if this works for me, maybe it'll work for someone else. There are a couple of other things I must mention as well, that this wasn't the thing that happened around my mum wasn't a one-off event. There had been other things like in the past, not as dramatic in a sense, but it would seem that every few years there would be something. And where my head wasn't in that space, I would just think, oh, okay, well, that was weird, and move on. But it seemed then that when I look back on all this, there did seem to be some sort of pattern that was pointing me in this direction. Again, it was something like every 5 years, there'd just be a weird little thing that would happen that I was like, okay, I know that just happened, but it doesn't, again, it just doesn't sit quite right. And I think that when we have these experiences, if you want to call them supernatural experiences, very often, with the exception of physically seeing a ghost or something like that, I feel that a lot of these things come in intuitively. They come in through feeling, and then when you get that feeling, you're like, okay, no, I know this, right? But then it's gone, and I think that obviously we're so conditioned to just living how we live with the 5 senses and just sort of trusting what we can see and hear and touch and all the rest of it. And I feel that when we have these experiences, they don't really sit in your memory the same way as regular stuff does, because you have this thing, but your brain doesn't have. This is my butchered way to come to put this together. Whether I'm right or not, I don't know. But I feel that your brain doesn't have anything to compare it to. When you have like a sort of intuitive hit or something, you can't compare it to what you just ate for dinner or something like that. So it just kind of doesn't want to know what to do with it, and you don't seem to remember these things in the same way. What I've noticed as I've progressed is that now I have them more and more, and sometimes at will, I suppose. Then I kind of do know what to do with them. Then I do recognize when it's not me, when it's something else coming in, and just starting to trust that. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that mediumship could include different types of psychic abilities, not necessarily seeing images or hearing voices? It could be other things too.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've got them wrote down here because I always forget what order to put these, but people talk about the clairs, the clairsentience, claircognizance, all these different ways of information coming in, whether it's a taste or a sound or a smell, or for me, it does seem to be just a knowing, a feeling, and sometimes I'll see things as well. Sometimes I'll get an image or something, or yeah. I mean, I'm still relatively early in this journey. I think it's 3 years in now. So I feel like I've got so much to learn, and I'm sure that some of the best mediums out there would also say that they've got still learning, So yeah, I feel that when I and I am given me psychic. But yeah, I suppose a mediumship does, yeah, absolutely sort of incorporate all of those abilities, if you could call them that. Whereas if you were giving a more of a psychic reading, then that obviously then you're not connecting with somebody that's passed over. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like it's a broad umbrella, and it's such a strange one, obviously, because and I've got to say, I constantly question it, even though I've had these experiences over and over again. I just cannot stop being skeptical about it. As soon as if somebody was to walk in and say I'm a medium, I'll be like, really? Are you? You know, but
Uh,
even though I've seen time and time and again that this is proven to me at least. But yeah, I just don't kind of just buy into it just for the sake of it being out there or what have you. Yeah. But then when I've had these experiences myself, and especially giving evidence to somebody else that they've confirmed that I know that I didn't know, you know, it's like there's no way that I knew that, and they've just said, yeah, that's right. That's kind of the thing. Yeah.
so I was going to ask, did you switch off your social media when you went to her workshop?
Oh yeah, yeah, and what is the workshop? I can't remember. Maybe. Yeah. But the workshops, so nothing really. I mean, we were doing exercises to open up and this and that, but I didn't really get anything. Other people seemed to be. She was putting us in small groups, and we were sort of practicing with each other. And other people seemed to be getting lots of success, and nothing happened for me that day. But that night, I went home, and I feel like it just sounds like I'm just making stuff up. But that night, I went home, and again had an amazing experience. My partner was away, and the cat was just staring at the corner of the room, like, and okay, cats can act odd at the best of times, but she was being really specifically odd. She was just staring at this one corner and then just watching something, and I couldn't see anything, couldn't see any bugs or anything like that. And I thought, well, because obviously my head was already in this space at this point, I'd just been just to this workshop for the whole day. So I thought, well, I'm just going to record whatever's going on here with my room, if there's anything, you know, with my phone, forgive me. So I just let the phone record for a while. Didn't see anything physically, but then when I look back at it, there's very clearly an orb that just shoots around the room, like zigzags around the room, and sort of just takes off and leaves a trail. Some people, I mean, I've shown friends that some people are like, I don't know, maybe that's just like a light, and it's not a light. You can see that it's specifically individual, and the way that it moves, and it's in the middle of the room. It's not as though it's on a wall or something like that. So yeah, it was just these. When I feel that when I first, at least in my experience, when I first opened up to this, it was kind of thing after thing kept happening. You know, now it's not so much. You know, it seems to, but like when you sort of open those floodgates, then they seem to sort of come thick and fast, these experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that some people are very fortunate to know what they want to be when they're young. And because of that, they have focus and they're able to push, bring themselves to a direction, and then they have the momentum behind it. But do you think some people are not meant to know?
I definitely do. And I also think, and this is, again, I sound like I'm just being lazy, but I think that really some of us aren't meant for the 9 to 5. And I've had discussions with my partner about this, and she's like, well, nobody likes 9 to 5. And I'm like, no. I really don't like, I mean, it's not like I don't like it. It's like everything in me screams to just get out of this environment. It's just not meant for me. I've never not worked. I've always done some sort of job, whether it was bartending. I was a personal trainer for a long time, and I've always done something, and I can always pay the bills. But so many jobs that I'm just this isn't for me. I can't explain it. It's just not for me. Like any kind of office work or anything like that, I feel like I'm, caged. But lately, fortunately, through the books and sort of exploring these areas, I'm now able to just sort of eke out a living at home, giving readings and things like that. I'm definitely not making that much money, but and I'm getting by with it. So things are going in the right direction. And I'm like, yeah, no, this makes much more sense to me. I don't have to deal with anybody. I don't have to pretend that I'm interested in this thing, or like this is something that I've genuinely finally found that really interests me. Yeah. So yeah, I feel that it was a long time coming. I mean, I just turned 49. But yeah, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do for 40 years, and I would just try to find the thing that I disliked the least, Yeah.
It's I feel the same. I can't handle office work at all. Just the thought of it makes me very sleepy, and
Right.
I get waves of unconsciousness that
Yeah.
wash over me.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
think those people are meant to be there so that you can live the life that you want to live, because you need that kind of infrastructure so that you can, move in and out of those places.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm just sort of saying what works for me. And again, my partner, God bless her, she's working every day, the 9 to 5 every day. But yeah, I just, I'll do it if I have to do it, but I really will avoid it as long as possible. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you're a free thinker,
Mm.
people need people like that, because that's what helps society expand and grow. If everybody just, sat at their desk and did what they're told to do, there's no growth, there's no change, there's no
That's
movement.
it. Yeah, no, and that's it. And it seems that, the people that the books resonated with, it's really resonated with. I don't think I've even mentioned the name of it. First one was called Letting Glow. The second one's Glowing
Yeah.
Deeper. But yeah, as particularly Letting Glow, people seem to really like, some people like the feedback that I got and emails that I got.
Mm.
The people were talking of, well, I had that happen and never heard anyone else describe that before. So that was, it's not like it's sold millions or anything like that, but I appreciate that the people that get it really get it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like the title. So explain the title a bit from your
Yeah.
thinking.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just a play on grief, really. I was in the darkest part of my life that I've been, but at the same time, these amazing things were happening, and I was learning all this new stuff that suddenly really resonated with me after nothing really ever had. So it was that, just sort of being in that place of grief and letting go of my mum, but then this thing emerging from it. I wouldn't have written that book if my mum was still here, and I wouldn't have gone down this path. So it was kind of a very, excuse me, very bittersweet experience. The whole thing has been so far. But yeah, my life suddenly makes sense, which it never really did before. But it came
Mm.
at I almost look at it as a parting gift from my mum, rather than look at it from the negative. It's almost like she kind of opened up this thing for me by passing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I find as humans, that seems to be how we get our biggest growth, is through
Yeah.
our biggest pain.
Yeah, no,
If you,
definitely, and yeah, I don't think mine's a particularly unique story. I think this happens to so many people. This is like I think mediumship is really like quite a common stop for people after losing somebody. Yeah,
yeah. And your second book?
yeah, Glowing Deeper. That kind of was less about me. Like the first one was essentially my life story, really, and then just all these things that had happened, and then started piecing them together, and it seemed like, oh yeah, okay, this was supposed to be this. The second one was just more, I'd learned so much, or I thought I'd learned so much. Like looking back at it now, I was like, I still didn't really know much, but but it's still that anyone that's starting on this journey, I think that this kind of they're both of them are a sort of a soft introduction to spiritual practices. I just learned so much. I studied female spirituality at the University of Barcelona online. I didn't go to Barcelona. And I trained with a couple of indigenous shamans. I met so many mediums. I trained with different mediums like James Van Praagh, Gordon Smith, and I was just soaking it all up as my everything. And I felt like, well, I just need to get this all out. So I just sort of did the same process as I learned about it. I just kind of poured it out. So yeah, it's more about sort of wider spiritual practices than the first one was really my story. Yeah.
Do you think that the shamans and the mediums converge at some point? Like they've got totally different education or tuition. Do you see how the dots join,
Yeah,
or is
completely.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I think we're just talking about, I think we're talking about the same thing, like essentially, just to sort of put a broad view out there on it. Of course, there are individual practices, and we have to be respectful of people's cultures, of course. But I think at the end of the day, we're all talking about the same thing. We're all talking about connecting with a higher source or a higher selves or whatever label sort of makes you most comfortable. Yeah, I mean, I think it's essentially the same thing. Like if a medium is talking about spirit guides, I think that, well, Native Americans, for example, obviously they're the most popular advocates of spirit guides. Like, and one thing I find funny is a lot of mediums that I've met in England, it's like everyone and their grandmother seems to have a Native American spirit guide. I'm like, again, really? Do you? You've got one too? Like lady down the road in Slough or something. She's got a Native American spirit guide with her. But I'm not discounting anyone's experiences, but yeah, they do seem to be popular.
But it's interesting because I have one too.
Forgive me. I'm not discounting it. Well, for what it's worth, I also met one too. So yeah, like but yeah, so I was like, oh, okay, well, I've got one too, or at least I had one for a while. I don't know if she's still around, but yeah, she was female as well, which was quite interesting.
So when you learn from the shamans, what is it that they teach? I mean, what is their modality? I understand the mediumship side of things, but what would the shamanic journey be more about?
I think that we're just talking about energy, like I don't know if it's just a question of semantics, but I feel like at the end of the day, we're just talking about the same stuff. If you don't
Mm.
necessarily talk about specifically getting in touch with a dead relative or something, but essentially it's in the same ballpark, that we're
Mm.
connecting with something beyond an intelligence beyond our own intelligence, and that's the thing. I get cynical, and I do again start to question these things, but then when I tap into it, I'm like, okay, well, this is way smarter than me. Like these things that I'm getting or that I'm writing down, that's not me. I'm not that smart. And I feel like that's amazing. And yeah, sorry to just go back to it. I feel that yeah, that's what we're talking about, or that's what some aspects of shamans are talking about as well.
Yeah. So what do you think your biggest obstacle to growth has been?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, just in terms of growing spiritually,
Hmm.
maybe trying to run before I can walk, getting ahead of myself, resting on my laurels already, which was interestingly something I've been writing a third book, and I feel like it's a conversation. Like I think that it's a direct dialogue, and that came up, and I thought, well, what's a laurel? I don't even know what a laurel is. It was, and I looked it up, and it was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it means, like resting on your previous successes, and I was like, yeah, I have. I've got a bit too comfortable. I wrote a couple of books, and I'm just sort of got in a good place. Mediumship definitely helped me with grief, so it kind of um, I got what I wanted to get from it.
Hmm.
So I did definitely sort of take a little breather there. I mean, I suppose I did a lot in 2 years already with two books and then all that I learned about. But yeah, then I got a little bit comfortable, and I feel that yeah, now I'm sort of seem to be going a bit, into a newer direction as well. I also feel that like mediumship isn't really my end goal. It's part of this, whatever it is, but I don't necessarily see myself standing up there giving people evidence, in a church or anything like that. But yeah, sorry to go back to your question. I feel that yeah, that just getting a bit too comfortable with things, and then yeah, the polar opposite of that, just trying to rush into it, and this stuff. It's different for everyone, I suppose. Like
Yeah.
I met one lady through this journey that had been doing it for a couple of months, and she was giving names, she was giving places, she was described like amazing, as though she'd been doing it for 20 years already. So yeah, I think it's different for all of us.
Yeah. Well, for some people, they've got a different. It's already there. They just developed a bit further along in their journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I do think that we've all got it to some degree. And like plenty of mediums talk about this and write about this, but it's some people can play guitar better than others, and or ride a bike better than somebody else. So I think we all have it. It's just kind of getting back to. I think that what it really comes back to for me is, and I talk about meditation as though I'm some like Buddhist or something, but I'm not. I don't do it that often, or as often as I could or should maybe. But I feel that that's really the key, is just being able to find that voice at the back, that isn't getting caught do for dinner tonight, or what you need to, you've got to buy pet food, all these things that are just constantly going through your head. And then just sort of being able to separate from that and just find that quiet voice. And I feel that that quiet voice is the same one that comes in times of crisis or something, or an accident. If anyone's ever been in that situation, you kind of have this quiet voice that just is like, oh, okay, this is happening now. And you know what I mean? It kind of speaks up.
Mhm.
And I feel that getting in touch with that is really the key, and really the start of any of this process, whether it be mediumship or just opening up spiritually or more intuitively. Yeah.
Mm. So now that you know that there is more and you've been that skeptical, what is it that you think people should know about spirituality?
Well, I just think again, I keep using that word semantics, but I feel that we're all talking about the same thing. And I used to say this a lot when I wrote the first book. It's almost got like a tagline, but I think that we all have these moments of intuition. But you know, anyone would agree that you could walk into a room where someone's had an argument and say cut the air with a knife, or you know, you get like a gut feeling about something, or we say we can't quite put our finger on something. But I think we're talking about clairaudience, clairsentience, clairtangence. So like we're just using different words. So everyone would agree that that's a thing, and that they have intuition, or that again, you can feel the atmosphere in a room, or go to a concert, you can feel the atmosphere there. You know. But then when you start using words like clairvoyance or what have you, then people just typically, for the most part, roll their eyes and say that you're talking nonsense. Although I think it's changing. I think people are more open to having these conversations now. So yeah, I think that's it. I feel that just use the words that work for you, like that make you comfortable with it. If this is something that someone's interested in and kind of had at the back of the mind, but didn't really know which way to go with it, just yeah, use what works for you. I think we're sort of talking about the same thing. Whether you're talking about your higher self or a higher power or a spirit guide or something like that, it could be all of those things. I think that we just actually don't quite grasp it. I think that me to use the term, excuse me, spirit guide or mediums using the term spirit guide, and somebody might argue with me about this, but I think it's possibly something beyond our comprehension, and that's just the best that we can make sense of it. That there's this thing, this individual entity giving us information. I think it's more than that, but that's the best way that we can interpret it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they present themselves in a way that we can understand to make it easier for us to digest.
Exactly, and then maybe that's why everyone's got a indigenous American spirit guide. You know, but yeah. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. I just feel that, but yeah, I feel that actually even Claire might disagree with me with that, and that's what I say. Claire is my teacher, and that's something that I've been somewhat mindful about, because especially in the UK, there's a big history of mediums and people. You know, this being a thing like spiritualism, almost turning into a religion of sorts in some areas of it, which I'm not interested in at all. But I do want to be mindfully respectful that that's all come before me. I've just stepped in here saying, well, everyone can be a medium, you know, but when there's people that have been doing this for 40 years already. So this is just my experience of it. But at the same time, I think it also might need that, you know. It's not like I'm definitely not any young maverick or anything like that. But I do feel that there are some areas of it that I've loved and people that I've met through this. And then there are some areas of it where I can see that people are trying to make an institution of it. And I think, well, that by its very nature is not that. And trying to compartmentalize it into almost a religion. That's how we ruin everything, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you know, each to their own. But and like I say, I'll try to be sort of respectful of what's come before, but at the same time, I think that by default, this isn't something that we should be able to or try to put in a box. Yeah, it is what it is. It's literally all around us. Yeah. Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
Well, you know, it helps for people to understand it better. So would you say that your skepticism has stood you in good stead then?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does, because I'll have to remind myself every now and again that this is still a real thing. Like it's really odd. It's like I've really got these sort of parallels, even though I'm 100% behind this and I definitely believe it. I can't help but question it all the time. Even my own experiences. But then I'll have one that is sort of beyond the norm or something, and I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah. Of course, this is a real thing. Like, what am I doing? Like, and like shared experiences as well. You know, I've had my partner. She's for a long time was a very. She might even still call herself an atheist, but I feel that she's somewhat drifted. And I'm not trying to change her opinion, but I've also said, well, I'm not in the habit of lying to you. You know, I'm not making this stuff up. This is what I've experienced, and she's kind of come around a little bit, and I'm not trying to bring her around. Like, totally respectful of her journey, but we have experienced a couple of things together, and I'm like, well, you know, come on, what was that then? Like, you know, so I find those things really fascinating. Like, we had one experience in particular where we went into a pub in Soho in London, an old pub, and we meditated together that day. It's the first and only time we've ever done it. And I think that there was a correlation between it. And we went into a pub that evening, and Laura sat down in front of me, and I could see straight away that, like, I just felt something shift, and I could see that she felt it. And she was just suddenly, okay, what's going on right now? And then we got this wave of, for one of a better expression, energy go between us. And it was loving and it was warm. And we were in this full pub, and this was nothing to do with that pub, you know. It was just like it was a over like again, I don't have the words for it. And it was just as though it were passing between us, around us. And she was like, I don't know what's going on. And I was like, no. I was like, yeah, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. And I was like, and you probably won't be able to have the words for this afterwards. I haven't got them anymore. But I was like, just feel it for as long as you can feel it. And it was really overwhelming, really powerful, really lovely, and just out of the blue. And but at the same time, on the day that we'd meditated together. So I think that it was our guides or something just giving us a little acknowledgement that they're seeing what we've been up to. Or then it was something in the pub that was again letting us know that it was there. But we definitely experienced that, and she definitely experienced that. So that was I'm like, okay, well, that's got to count for something.
Yeah. So your questioning actually, the skepticism leads to the questioning, which leads you to finding the answers, which leads to your growth.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I think so.
Which then would lead to her growth, because now you're starting to question her beliefs.
Yeah, perhaps, and that it's interesting though. I think that I completely respect other people's journeys, and I being skeptical myself, I understand other people's, but then I will find myself going on the defensive a little bit and trying to be like, well, no, because yeah. But so many of these experiences are so subjective. Like, so they're just like an internal experience, like that one was. But thankfully, we had it together. But trying to describe that to somebody, it's like it's impossible.
Yeah, it's hard because I've seen orbs, and I had a partner who said it's light reflected in the camera. It's dust. It's just dust. And I thought, well, it's interesting that the dust would fly in that direction.
Saying, like people have said to me too. But...
Yeah. How has your journey helped your relationship with your partner, or has it changed in any way?
Yeah, I think that. Oh, I feel sorry. Forgive me. I just sound like I'm just talking about myself all the time. But I think that she can see that I found my thing, essentially. And for some reason, she trusted that I knew what I was doing, even when I didn't have my thing. And now we're going in the right direction, and I appreciate. I can see that she, for some reason or other, she saw something in me that I probably didn't recognize, but she seemed to think that I knew what I was doing when I didn't. but now I'm sort of on track, and I feel that this is what I was always supposed to be doing. So I really appreciate that and especially this area, because it's such a niche, like, well, what are we talking about here? Like, I'm spending days at home online giving people spiritual advice on the phone or what have you, and it's sometimes I'm catching myself thinking, like, what am I doing to like make money here? Of course, it's not about money, but it's nice to be able to do something that people seem to value, and that hopefully helps people, and that I'm also getting an income from that, rather than working for somebody else's dream.
Absolutely. But people study to be doctors, then it costs them time, it costs them money to do that work, to do the research, to do the internships, and then that's their career, right? Yeah.
But it's just nice that we seem to be on track now, going in this direction, whatever this direction is. It's interesting. It's an interesting journey, and I just didn't. Again, this has been such a, we're talking about pretty big things at the end of the day, I suppose, and I feel that that's just taken over for me. Like I did, like I say, I did think that I wanted to pursue acting, and I did to some degree. I was paying the bills with it. I wasn't under any illusions about it. Getting into that in my 40s, but this is bigger than that. For whatever it is, like, and that's kind of, I'm like, oh, well, that stuff's just like all egos and people wanting to be seen on TV, and once I saw myself on TV, I was like, well, now what? It wasn't like it wasn't a great revelation I thought it was going to be, and then all this stuff that I've got into since I'm writing these books, I'm like, oh, this is amazing to learn about. Like, why isn't everybody fascinated by this? But yeah.
Well, it wasn't just that the time is right for you, but the time is right for everybody, actually. Because to me, there's a huge shift coming. It's already started happening.
Yeah.
And maybe all of this wanderlust that you experience, all of that was just in preparation for this time that is now.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And funny you say that about the time being now, because I feel that that's something that I seem to come back to again and again, is just talking about this moment of now. I mean, that it kind of freaks me out when I go too much into it. But I did have an experience some years ago in my mid-30s when I was talking about these things that would happen every now and again, where all of a sudden I had this huge shift, and it was just suddenly like now. And I couldn't stop it, and it was terrifying. Actually, people talk. I mean, I think Eckhart Tolle wrote a book about it. I've never read that book, but the experience I had seemed to be very different to whatever he went, or maybe not. I don't know. I haven't read it, but it was terrifying. I couldn't switch it off. All of a sudden, something just shifted, and time seemed absurd. You know, I suddenly couldn't just think about what I was doing earlier or what I was going to do later in the day. It was just now. And it just didn't stop, and it lasted for months. I thought I was going out of my mind, and this was some years. Wait, this is probably like in my mid-30s. And I went to doctors. They started using words like psychosis, which just terrified me. I was given anti-anxiety meds, sleeping pills. Just nothing stopped it. It was just now, now, now. And I was trying to explain this to people, and they were just looking at me like I was nuts, right? Like maybe rightly so. And I truly went to a very dark place. It was almost like a constant panic attack that it just didn't let up. I just didn't understand what was going on. I eventually found a therapist, and I went to this guy because he was a hypnotist. I was like, okay, just zap this away. I just want this to stop. And oddly, he knew exactly what I was talking about. And I feel that I'd found the one therapist in Helsinki that had this kind of more of an esoteric background. And he was like, no. He's like, you're not going nuts. He was like, this is an awakening. He said, you're experiencing time for what it really is. And I was like, I don't care. I just wanted to stop. I just want to get back to the herd out there. And he gave me a very basic grounding meditation. He didn't hypnotize me. He said that wouldn't have worked. A very basic grounding meditation, which just worked on like just brought me back again, like online or offline, depending on what way you look at it. And I feel that ever since then, it was just like a big shift, like a something. And that might have, again, been, well, I think it very clearly was pointing me towards this direction. But at the time, I didn't know what to do with it. I kept doing this meditation. It kept bringing me back. And eventually I sort of just got back to, normal reality. But it was a huge shift. And this therapist, he started talking about shamanic sickness and things like that. All these things that I was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I just didn't care. But in hindsight, I feel that it was a really profound glimpse into kind of ultimate reality. And it's something that I just sort of come back to again and again to just tell people that, yeah, we truly do only have this moment of now. And we have these multiple timelines out in front of us, and we can do whatever we want with them. I'm assuming that I could, that we'll finish our conversation. I'll go and make some food and watch TV tonight or something like that. But I could do anything I wanted to. I could run out into the street naked. That would shift me and my partner to a completely different timeline. I'd get arrested or something. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like that's how things work. Like we literally can, like, we go left or we go right, or, we see that person or don't see that person, and everything changes. And, and we all seem to jump onto these alternate realities. Sorry, I'm rambling again. But I think this whole thing is nuts and beautiful, when you start looking at it like that from that perspective. Yeah, and I think it's magic.
Could that have led to you not knowing what you want to do? Because there's so many things you can do. It's almost like, well, I could do this and I could do that.
Yeah, I don't think so. So I mean, that was just something that I didn't associate. Even though this therapist guy had said that it was an awakening or whatever, I didn't care at the time. That wasn't part of my thing. I was like, I don't care. I thought I was going nuts. Now I'm not. Good. Let's move on. But yeah, but it's only been in recent years, since exploring all these things, and people have contacted me and said, well, that happened to me, and I came back from it. And, and I wonder, and I'm definitely not dismissing mental illness by any means, but I do wonder, having gone through that, if these things do go under the radar or be dismissed with, pills and sort of conventional medicine, when it might be a very powerful awakening.
Yeah.
I wish we had better language for this, but I didn't go nuts, and it just seems to offer a new perspective on everything for me. So Yeah, I wonder. But yeah, in terms of my own life, I was just glad to put that behind me. And I think just not knowing what I wanted to do, but that was more to do with sort of practicalities around the way I was brought up, and parents splitting up and having a stepdad I didn't like, and blah blah blah, all that kind of thing, and proximity where I grew up in the Isle of Wight, there wasn't really that many options in the 80s and 90s. So I think that, yeah, me not knowing what I wanted to do was more like, more through lifestyle, than sort of spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the writing, is that something you were going to continue with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the middle of writing a third book now. I conceived of letting Glow and Glow and Deeper as a trilogy of books,
Yeah.
and I thought that I was writing the third one, but it seems to be turning into something else. It seems to be a lot bigger, and it's odd because I'm not really crediting myself with writing it, and as nuts as that sounds, it's definitely a conversation.
Yeah.
And like I say, whereas letting Glow and Glow and Deeper was very much leaning towards developing as a medium and psychic, this seems to be a lot bigger. A lot of the things that are in it, it's not like I don't think that it's going to reinvent the spiritual wheel or anything like that. I think it's just reinforcing what others have said, before me. But it is fascinating because, again, like half of it, I know that I didn't know those things. I'm not the first person to talk about, automatic writing or whatever you want to call it. There are plenty of books out there, but yeah, it's an interesting process. It's like something else is just taken over. So just see where it leads. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people say that it like flows through you, not from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It really is interesting. Yeah. And to start with, I was thinking, okay, am I just talking to myself here? What's going on? But again, others have done this already. Like I mentioned, Neil Donald Walsh earlier and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Just James from Prague, did you study with him directly, or was it via online?
Yeah, that was at the tail end of COVID. So yeah, I've done a couple of in-person workshops with Gordon Smith. So he's kind of his counterpart in the UK. They do a lot of things together. And then yeah, with James Van Praagh, it was at a Gordon Smith James Van Praagh workshop online. Yeah. So interesting character. He actually dismissed my book immediately when I told him I wrote a book. He was like, oh, all these kids writing books about mediumship. Like I was like, well, just my experience, and I haven't been doing it for that long, but yeah.
Oops.
Fine. Yeah.
Shouldn't be doing that. Interesting you'd say that, but okay. Yeah, so how could people get hold of you?
Yeah, I've got a website. I think I'm going to revamp it soon. That's phillwebster.com. That's 2 L's with Phil. I'm active on probably Instagram, the most, same thing, just Phill Webster with 2 L's. Got a TikTok, but barely use it. And then, yeah, the book is available everywhere. If they haven't physically got it in the shop, then you can order it. But it should be at all the usual places like W.H. Smith, Barnes and Noble, like all of the standard ones. And of course, Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll post all those links below.
Right. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So do you have a message for our viewers before we go?
I think that, yeah, if you're interested in this, I think that I keep coming back to meditation. I feel that that's really beneficial in opening up spiritually, and even not opening up spiritually. I think it just to take that 5 minutes with yourself at the start of the day to just have a breath and just, I feel like it really puts things in perspective. And there are plenty of guided meditations on YouTube if people find it. And I kind of don't struggle with it anymore, but I know that people do find it hard to feel that you need to focus. You're going to have these thoughts that go through your head. It's inevitable. I think even if you've been meditating for 30 years, you still get that. It's like we can't switch it off. But you start to learn to detach from it and not give it a backstory and just kind of just be present with this moment. And I think it's just really hugely beneficial. I think just like amazing things come from it. Yeah. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It was great
thanks for your time. Meet you. You too, and forgive me if I rambled a bit here and there, but yeah, just
no, it's, you know what, people get to know you, the person. Yeah, awesome. Well, good luck with your book as well.
Thanks very much. Nice to have met you.
Looking forward to it. Yeah. All right. Stay well.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.